Welcome back to the Just Breathe podcast. Today we're asking a question a lot of us are always thinking about, but not always saying out loud. You know, are the kids all right? And for those of you who follow me and know who the kids are, that's usually all of us that are first responders or in law enforcement or even in the military. Not just new recruits and tenured officers, but the next generation of public safety professionals stepping into organizations shaped by constant readiness, high expectations, and cumulative stress. This conversation that I'm about to have with this person, and I can't wait, is really focusing on conversations about organizational responsibility, how leadership decisions, culture, unspoken norms shape well-being long before the stress shows up, especially when it shows up as burnout, disciplinary issues, or even attrition issues. So we are still hearing how departments are understaffed and don't have enough folks working on it. So joining me today is a voice that has spent years, and I'm saying this years not to age you, my friend, but naming what the job does to people and what leaders can do differently. Kevin's the co-author, of Man, You're Crazy. This is the book. And you can see I've read the book and I've got my cocktail napkin in spaces, if you can't see that. And his work challenges organizations to confront the stigma, rethink what it means about strength, and take responsibility for how the job impacts people during it. And we are even having this conversation about retirement as well. What does that look like? So let's get to it. Good morning, I think still. Kevin, how are you?
You're out in the other coast. I know you spent some time out in the right coast.
Oh wow.
No, it's the afternoon here now, but it's a dreary day, so you can't tell what time of day it is.
I cannot, but it doesn't matter. You're here with us now, and I so appreciate it. Your book does an incredible job, and I'm going to be adding this to the Command College reading list for this. Your book does an incredible job of sharing your lived experience as well as Christopher's, as you so lovingly mentioned to me, your brother from another mother. And I think that before we can sort of talk about the individual and coping and what I call survival, we need to talk about taking responsibility. And you and I have had this conversation, but we're talking about how public safety organizations, through leadership behavior, through policy, through training, the informal culture, actually really does shape the well-being of their officers. And then, as we say, from recruitment to retirement, when you get on the other side, what does that look like? But my question first for you, how are the leadership behaviors? So the policies, the training, the environment, we always talk about culture. How are all of those things sort of interacting and colliding together to create what I consider to be officers? And I'll answer my own question, are the kids all right? And the answer to that is no. What are all the things that are happening there that we are dealing with now, because we do have generations of folks that are not okay?
So you look at the culture in police work specifically. I cannot speak to the other first responders because I'm just a old street cop. How many of us are alcoholics? How many of us have multiple affairs? How many of us exhibit these unhealthy behaviors? These are not the behaviors that we had when we came into this position. I don't know of any person who has an alcohol problem that was able to pass the physical and able to pass the police academy. Yet, over time, we start seeing all these things come through. And I think the leadership's responsibility is to, number one, destigmatize all these bad behaviors and understand that there's a cause and effect in all of those things. They don't just spring up. These are not who these people are. These are coping mechanisms. I'm not making excuses for that stuff. I have 13 years sober. I was a horrendous alcoholic. And I take full ownership of all my bad behavior. However, that was my method then of coping. I have newer methods right now. You're starting to see a shift in police work. When I travel throughout the country and I talk to all these police chiefs, and the odd thing is the police chiefs and the sheriffs, they're all my age, which makes me either feel somewhat important or very old. And I'm going to say important.
Okay.
Because I don't want everyone to think of myself. They're becoming my age.
Yes.
When I first got on the job, we were surrounded by what I always called dinosaurs. Okay. These are guys, hey, listen, You'll have choir practice in the parking lot in the back. If you have a problem, if a call affected you, do not say anything. Do not tell administration. We will take care of it amongst ourselves, usually in unhealthy coping mechanisms. That is changing. That is changing. You have some forward-thinking leaders, some great leaders. You know, I look at one example, one shining example is a gentleman named Dr. Will Aiken. He's the sheriff of Clay County, Missouri. He had me out there, and I spoke at his organization, and he is so forward-thinking. It's something that I've never experienced inside police work. He's so forward-thinking in the fact that, okay, we train our police officers to be so strong physically. We train them. We make sure they can get in the lean and rest. We can do push-ups. We can do pull-ups. We can pass the PT tests. But what are we doing to strengthen their minds? Because each muscle is as important in the job as the other. And it's something that's gone neglected for all of these years. You know, I look back to when I was in the police academy. You know how much mental health training I had in the academy?
Same as
you
mine.
You already know the answer.
Yeah, same as
mine.
Same
as yours.
Mm-hmm.
We had zero. And now you're going to go out and you're going to see the things that either they write books about, they make movies about, or people rubberneck on the road as they're driving past, hoping to get a glimpse, but not really wanting to get a glimpse. We see them. We have a front row seat to life. So that begs the question is, yes, we are able to take the physical demands of the job, but so many of us are unable to take the mental demands of the job. And then what happens, right? So we don't want to bring these things home, so we shut down our emotions, because oftentimes you see a dead child and you have to go on to the next call and you hear somebody yelling at you because you were late for their car break-in report. And they don't understand, and they're screaming and they're calling you all sorts of. I've had this happen to me. Meanwhile, inside you're bubbling up and you want to explode on that person, but you're trying to be a professional, and all you say is, "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry, sir. We're a little busy today." And then you shut down your emotions so you can function on that next job. And then what happens over time? You start shutting down your emotions at home, which is where the unhealthy behaviors come in. You don't want to bring it home to your wife, your husband, your spouse. So you don't say anything. It's three answers that I never accept out of anybody. It's, how you doing? Mm-hmm. Fine, good, okay. Because you don't really want to know.
Yeah.
You know, if I have this saying where I say, you know, if you're going to ask the question, you better believe I can handle your confession. All right. So when I ask people how they're doing, I need to see what's underneath. Yeah. I'm not asking that. It's not a greeting. It's an opening. So, but police are very bad at this, and we're trained to be bad at this because we have to have that certain level of resilience in order to continue to do our job. I kind of did a long-winded answer to you, but I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, and you're never long-winded. You know that. All the nuggets, and you mentioned, and I'll mention also, you know, Chief Jack Cawley out of Castle Rock PD here in Colorado, who's another one of those forward thinkers, right? That has to pull us forward. You so aptly identified that the chiefs are younger. I'm hoping that they are also more open to what is happening. They're all younger because I am old, so I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna own that part. But the other part of this too, that we talk about, you visit a lot of organizations and you have a lot of conversations with sheriffs and law enforcement, big, small. What are you seeing when it comes to the ability to self-regulate? What are the things that are coming to your attention for law enforcement?
You know, it's a scary environment for law enforcement to admit that something is affecting them negatively. They're worried about their job. They're worried about, I tell people, I was always afraid to get put on the rubber gun squad. Very few people know what that is. That's when you use the training rubber gun that you used in the academy, because your real gun is taken away. So there's that stigma right there. But so here's my role when I go to speak to them, and this is what the trust that these men of importance, you know, these men and women of importance that I come into contact with, they entrust me to be a conversation starter with their staff. Okay, so if they're listening to me talk, and they know that I've made about every wrong move that a man can make, I've made about every mistake a man can make, and I own every single one of them, and I've gotten through it. I am not Superman. I have no special talents. What I have is the ability to be vulnerable. So here's the lesson that I wish I knew when I was a cop, and this is a lesson that I take to police chiefs. Cops are real good at telling you their victories, right? Oh, I saved this person. I made 15 arrests. I got 10 kilos of cocaine, all these different great things that they did without their career. How many cops are going to come up to you and say, yeah, I was doing CPR on this person for 2 hours and I lost them. I was doing mouth to mouth on a 2-year-old kid and I lost them. Now, if you and I are sitting down having a conversation, you as a law enforcement officer, and me as a law enforcement officer, and I tell you all those great things, that I got medals, life-saving medals, and all that stuff. I got medals that I don't even know what I have.
100%.
You're going to go, oh, that's great, and you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to say, well, I have that medal too, or I did something even better, because it's a constant game of outdoing the other.
Yeah.
But if I tell you, hey, I can still see the color of that child who was locked in the toy box and suffocated. Now, when I tell you those successes, we become separated.
Right.
There's no closeness to us. There's no connection to us. But when I tell you that I can still see the color of that child who was unfortunately locked in a homemade toy box that passed away, now all of a sudden you feel that between you and I, and it actually comes through a little bit on camera. It's one of the few emotions that come through on camera.
Absolutely.
You see where you start to lean in and you're like, okay, I feel you on that one. I feel what you're feeling. So what I learned later in life, and this is what I take to police chief, is you can impress people with your successes, but you really connect to them through your vulnerability. So that's my job when I go out. I'm as vulnerable can be. Because here's also something I've learned. Nobody in this world can judge me as harshly as I've judged myself. All right, so I just let it all hang out now.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate you saying that and identifying that the vulnerability and the ability to look back and say, I've experienced this. I may not have received a medal for it or even acknowledged for it, but it was those smaller things that, whether you're comforting that mother whose child was found but not in the condition in which they're expecting, it is all of those things that we do. And I want to say that we had Dr. Lawrence Miller on, who mentioned those are the things that we don't reward, right? That you were able to comfort a family. And Dr. Ellen Kushner as well, who was on our other episode, mentioned the same thing, that the focus and intention is too much on the things we can hold up and say, my medal's bigger than your medal. Right. Or the war stories we tell. Right. I was at a retirement celebration and a dedication of the first Black woman division chief in Denver, Armedia Gordon, and my classmate, who I hadn't seen in decades, mind you. And we're chuckling, but how quickly we moved into stories. Right. And it wasn't stories about showing up on horrible calls. It was stories from the academy, stories from, working the car together. So those kinds of things. And we almost are, I would always say, we're almost raising folks not to have that conversation, right? To avoid that conversation. So one of the things I want to talk about here is, we have a generation of new leaders. We have a generation of new officers that are inheriting. And yes, things are changing, but they're inheriting some cultural pieces that are not good. And that we now, as retirees, know if we would have done some front end things and had therapy along the way, that we probably would turn out different people. Talk to us about not just what they are inheriting, but the reality when you've got our old norms and you've got new kids coming in expecting something very different.
I think it falls back to generational curses. That can happen in family life, but it can also happen in police work. Gone are the days of, I had this guy in the police academy, and he was great. He was a great supervisor. He was a captain. He looked like out of casting call for Hill Street Blues, like thick, white mustache. Even his PT gear screamed of like the 70s.
That's a visual. I don't want it.
But it is. Oh, and I don't even want to talk about the shorts that were ultra short.
I don't want that visual, man.
Yeah. But so there's generational curses that the officers of today are paying for that happened 20, 30 years ago. There was curbside adjustment. When I first got on, there was still curbside adjustment to avoid an arrest. you never did it. You never did it out of cruelty. You kind of tried to do it to correct bad behavior without having any police record on it. But sometimes police got a little heavy-handed, especially in the 80s and 90s. It wasn't unheard of to get a crack with a flashlight or a nightstick or something like that. Well, those days are long gone. Those days have been gone for 20, 30 years. Okay, probably 30, 40 years. And the officers of today are still paying that price through public perception. So the public perceives us as these rogue cops who are on power trips. It's not that way anymore. What you have today is you have a much more professional police department. You have businessmen rather than just civil servants or just these tough guys that were military, and I'm not knocking military. They make great cops, but they're a different breed of human being. Now you have thinkers coming into the police department versus just brute people who can stand their ground. While that was good at some point, and we do need those people in there, we also need to let the thinkers know that we have this issue that is a perception of police from 30, 40 years ago. And now we have to change culture, because and the public doesn't understand this. I do believe the public doesn't understand that police can't do their job without the public. So we better become friends, and we better figure out how to work together. Because if we don't figure out how to work together, it's going to make our job much more difficult, and we're not going to be as effective. And then once they see that we're willing to work with them, now it becomes a symbiotic relationship. So I think the new officers, I think their biggest challenge right now is to figure out how to have some sort of coexistence with the public and stop having all this backlash. 99.9% of the police in the world are great people. They're awesome people. But unfortunately, in any job, if you have a corporate job, 10% of them are ineffective.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say that very kindly, because you're a doctor, you're a higher educated person.
Oh, it's got nothing to do with understanding the truth. What's the truth, right? Speak the truth on that.
But police, it's a much lower percentage. It's only the problem is the problem there is everybody is always judged by their lowest common denominator. Whatever group of people, pick one, fill in the blank. Police are always judged by their lowest common denominator. And that's why I've said this many times, that nobody hates a bad cop worse than a good cop, because those bad cops give me a pockmark. I spent my whole career I never picked up a quarter without turning it in. I spent my whole career never wanting to embarrass myself or my family or my friends or anything. And then I watch people who just throw that away and throw caution to the wind, and they do things that are inappropriate, and they put a black tarnish on that badge that I held so dear, that I respected. So these officers today, their biggest hurdle is they got to figure out how to get rid of those generational curses and work with the public, because that's going to make them more effective. And we got to get back to that. I mean, were you a cop on September 12th, 2001?
I was in the gang unit.
How great was it to be a cop that day?
I know. I was in the gang
unit.
How
great was it to be a cop that day?
Yeah, it was a mess. It was a mess.
I bet you couldn't pay for a cup of coffee if you wanted to.
No,
that's where I want to get back to.
And you know that, right? So, and then you know that my time in NYPD, and the thing that was still very prevalent, right, is that shared experience, but not just that, but the aftermath of that. Right. So, yes, I hear you. I'm with you on all of that. And I think there's other issues, and we know the cultural implications of long historical relationships, that you do have new generations who are trying to figure out what does that mean. But for our time, I want to switch back to the book. So I'm not your publicist, but I am today. If there was one thing in this book that you could share with the audience, what would that be? And there's many in here, believe me. There are many. The stories are just powerful. But if there was one thing you could say to this audience in regards to our topic, right? We know the kids are not all right. What would that be?
So police suicide is heavily where I sit in what I want something very simple. I just want cops to stop killing themselves, because retired guys are offing themselves at record rates. Yep. So I continue to repeat this mantra, even in my own head. I repeat it. I just say, not today. Alcoholics will use this. Alcoholics will use this as one day at a time. Athletes will use it as trying to keep your world small. If you're a runner and you go out and you're having a bad run, you just work telephone pole to telephone pole. It's keeping your world small. So when I say not today, what that means is these momentary thoughts that go through your head, and this is all throughout the book of how just my life just unraveled, and I had all these bad thoughts in my head. I wish I would have said at the worst of the worst times, whatever I'm thinking about, whatever I'm planning to do, whatever is going through my head, I'm not going to deal with it today. Let me let the sun rise tomorrow. Let me figure it out tomorrow. And because when the sun comes up tomorrow, life looks a little bit different. Because here's the thing about pain and suffering, which every officer across the country, every first responder across the country goes through. Pain and suffering is the most essential thing that we must go through in order to be put where we need to be. Your best leaders know what it's like to work from the ground up. They know what it's like to go through the pain and suffering, and it gives them a new appreciation when they're on the other side of that. It gives them a whole new outlook of everything. Pain and suffering is going to put you in that position that you need to be. Sometimes it really hurts. Sometimes it stinks to go through that stuff. This book is all about going through that pain and suffering and realizing that when you get on the other side, you have some real beauty in your life that you didn't see. Because when you're in that dark place, and I've been there several times, you got tunnel vision and your peripheral vision is not anywhere. So it's just you're looking right here. You don't see all the beautiful things around you, your wife, your kids, your house, all the friends that you have. You're looking at this darkness here. And then what happens when you get through and you get closer to the light, when you get towards the end of that tunnel, your peripheral vision opens up and you look to your right and your left and you're like, hey, where did all you people come from? They've been there the whole time, but you've just been so closed off and you can't see it. In my suicide attempts, people ask me all the time, well, didn't you think about your kids? I'm like, yeah, I absolutely thought about my kids. I thought they'd be better off without me. It was a big lie I told myself. So that's the whole book. There's beautiful things on the other side of suffering. And when you get through it, you're just that much stronger. It builds strength. You can't start a fire without friction. That's the whole point of it. And in order to get to those beautiful things in life, sometimes you got to walk through the pits of hell. You got to walk straight through the fire, and you're going to think you're crazy. For many years, I thought I was.
Yeah. And on that note, there's beautiful things on the other side, sir. I so appreciate you and your podcast. Remember, make sure I have this right. The Suffering podcast.
The Suffering Podcast.
The Suffering Podcast. You do not want to miss Kevin Donaldson's podcast. Man, I'm telling you, we've had some conversations about, we sort of text back and forth about moral injury, all these things. So we're going to have those conversations, you and I. And for our listeners, this is just a teaser of the two of us because we have a long-standing conversation about what we need to talk about how do we help folks make sure that they are not just self-regulating, but getting the help that they need when they get to the other side. So they can get to the other side. So I appreciate you, my friend, for taking the time to join us on the Just Breathe podcast. And we say if you control the breath, you can control the moment. And this moment with you has been wonderful. So thank you. And I will see you soon. I'm excited about that. And you will promise to join us again.
Yes, and I do want to thank Dr. Keesee Hickman,
Yes.
for connecting us. That man has been an angel on my shoulder.
Yes. Professor.
And I don't know why. But you know what? I'm not going to look that gift horse in the mouth.
That's right. That's Professor Keesee Hickman when we were at NYPD. So he's fabulous. You're 100%. Right.
Yeah.
We'll take them. We take all angels. So we have no worries with that. But thank you, my friend, and safe travels to you.
Thank you.